I'll never forget the moment my boss grabbed my arm in the kitchen and hissed those words at me. Just serve and stay quiet. His fingers dug into my skin hard enough to leave marks, and I could smell the expensive cologne he bathed in every morning, the kind that costs more than my rent. We were at the Ashford estate, this sprawling mansion in the Hamptons where I'd been sent to cater a private dinner for one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. Marcus, my boss and the owner of Elite Events, had been clear about expectations. Smile, serve, disappear. Be invisible. I'd done this job 100 times before, weaving through rooms full of people who looked through me like I was furniture, but something felt different that night. Maybe it was the way Marcus kept checking his phone, or how his jaw clenched every time someone mentioned the Ashford name. I should have trusted my gut. The dining room was something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across walls covered in actual oil paintings. Not prints, actual paintings that probably cost more than I'd make in my entire lifetime. The table could seat 20 people easily, but tonight there were only 5. Richard Ashford, the tech billionaire who'd made his fortune in AI security. His wife Diane, who looked like she'd stepped off a yacht in Monaco. Their son Connor, who kept checking his Rolex like he had somewhere better to be. Their daughter Emma, who hadn't looked up from her phone once, and sitting at the head of the table, a woman in her 70s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Margaret Ashford, Richard's mother. I was carrying out the second course, some deconstructed salmon thing that Marcus had obsessed over for 3 days, when I noticed Margaret watching me. Not like the others watched, with that glazed-over look that said I was part of the scenery. She was really seeing me. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and there was something in them I couldn't quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. I set the plate in front of Richard, then Diane, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd served enough rich people to know the dance by heart. But when I reached Margaret, she did something that made my heart stop. She raised her hand and signed, "Thank you." My hands moved before my brain could catch up. "You're welcome," I signed back. It was instinct. Pure muscle memory from years of signing with my little brother who'd been born deaf. The moment my hands finished moving, I realized what I'd done. Margaret's face lit up like I'd just handed her a gift, this beautiful smile that transformed her entire expression. But across the table, I caught Marcus's face through the kitchen doorway. He looked like he wanted to murder me. The rest of the dinner was torture. I could feel Marcus's rage radiating from the kitchen like heat from an oven. Every time I walked through those doors, he glared at me with this intensity that made my stomach clench. But Margaret kept signing to me. Little things. "This is delicious. What's your name?" And like an idiot, I kept responding. Her family didn't even notice. They were too busy talking about stock portfolios and their upcoming trip to Aspen. They had no idea their matriarch was having an entire conversation with the help. But I knew I was screwed. When you work in catering, you learn the unspoken rules fast. Don't talk unless spoken to, don't make eye contact, and definitely don't stand out. I'd just broken all 3. If you're wondering how this dinner party turned into the wildest night of my life, hit that subscribe button because what happened next changed everything. After dessert, I was in the kitchen scraping plates when Marcus cornered me. His face was red, and a vein in his temple was pulsing. "What the hell was that?" he spat, his voice low and dangerous. "I told you to be invisible." I opened my mouth to explain, but he cut me off. "Do you have any idea what you just did? Do you know how long I've been trying to get the Ashford account?" He was so close I could see the coffee stains on his teeth. They don't want staff who interact. They want furniture. They want ghosts. And you just had to show off your little party trick. "It's not a party trick," I said, my voice shaking. "She signed to me first. What was I supposed to do, ignore her?" Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Yes, that's exactly what you were supposed to do." He grabbed a wine glass and threw it into the sink, where it shattered. "You just cost me a $50,000 contract, Sophie. $50,000. My mind went blank. $50,000. For what? I made $11 an hour, plus whatever tips Marcus felt like passing along, which wasn't much. What kind of catering contract was worth that much money? Unless it wasn't about the catering at all. Before I could ask, one of the Ashfords' regular staff members, an older woman in a crisp black uniform, poked her head into the kitchen. Mrs. Ashford would like to see the young woman who signs. In the library. Marcus's face went from red to purple. Tell Mrs. Ashford that Sophie is busy cleaning up. The woman gave him a look that could freeze lava. Mrs. Ashford doesn't make requests. She gives instructions. Then she looked at me. Follow me. The walk to the library felt like walking to my execution. I could practically hear Marcus's blood pressure spiking behind me. The house was even more impressive from the inside. All marble floors and sweeping staircases and rooms that seemed to go on forever. The library was at the end of a long hallway, and when the woman opened the door, I stepped into another world. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves packed with actual books. Not decorative ones, but worn, read, loved books. A fire crackled in a fireplace big enough to stand in. And sitting in a leather chair by the window was Margaret Ashford, no longer surrounded by her family, finally looking relaxed. She smiled when she saw me and patted the chair across from her. I sat, my heart hammering. Up close, I could see the laugh lines around her eyes. The way her jewelry was expensive but understated. A single strand of pearls. A wedding ring that had clearly been worn for decades. She signed, "Your boss is angry." I nodded. She continued, "He thinks I don't know what's happening in my own home." I must have looked confused because she laughed silently, her shoulders shaking. I'm deaf, not blind, and I'm certainly not stupid. She reached for a notepad on the side table and wrote something down, then turned it toward me. I know about the cameras. My blood turned to ice. Cameras? What cameras? Margaret kept writing. My son thinks I don't notice things. He's been installing security cameras all over this house for months, in the hallways, the kitchen, my bedroom. He says it's for my safety, but I know what he's really doing. He's watching me. I didn't know what to say. This was so far beyond my job description, I couldn't even see the job description anymore. Margaret leaned forward, her eyes intense. She signed slowly, deliberately. I need your help. 3 simple signs that turned my entire world upside down. Me? Help a billionaire? What could I possibly do for someone who could buy and sell my entire existence with her pocket change? But there was something in her face. Desperation, maybe, or loneliness, that made me lean forward too. How? I signed back. Have you ever had a moment where you knew your life was about to change, and you couldn't decide if you should run toward it or away from it? Drop a comment below and tell me about it, because I'm still not sure I made the right choice. Margaret pulled out her phone. An iPhone with the font size increased so much I could read it from across the room, and typed out a message, then showed it to me. My son is trying to have me declared incompetent. He wants control of my estate. The cameras are gathering evidence, trying to show I'm confused, that I can't take care of myself. But I'm not confused. I'm deaf. There's a difference. My stomach dropped. I'd heard about this kind of thing, these nightmare scenarios where families turned on each other over money. But I'd never imagined being in the middle of one. Why are you telling me this? I signed. Because you're the first person in 6 months who's treated me like a human being. She signed back. Everyone else talks about me like I'm not in the room. They talk over me, around me, through me, even my own children. Especially my own children. Her hands moved faster now, agitated. Richard hired your boss specifically. Marcus is in on it. The cameras in the kitchen? They're watching you too, documenting every interaction we have. Richard wanted to prove I'm making inappropriate connections with staff, that I'm losing my judgment. Everything clicked into place. The $50,000 contract. Marcus's panic when I signed to her. The way Richard Ashford had barely acknowledged my existence all night. This wasn't a dinner party, it was a setup, and I just walked right into the middle of their trap. I should go, I signed, standing up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely form the letters. I can't be part of this. I need this job. Margaret stood too, moving faster than I would have expected. She grabbed my arm, not hard, not like Marcus had, but firm enough to stop me. She signed, "Please, I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I just need a witness, someone who can testify that I'm of sound mind, someone who isn't on my son's payroll." I thought about my apartment, my student loans, my little brother's medical bills that I helped my parents pay every month. I thought about Marcus and his threats and his connections in the industry that could blacklist me from every catering company in New York. But I also thought about my brother, about what it felt like to watch people talk over him, ignore him, treat him like he was broken just because he communicated differently. "What do you need me to do?" I signed. The plan was insane. Margaret had been secretly recording her son's conversations with his lawyer, documenting his plans to petition the court for guardianship over her. She had evidence of her own, financial records showing she managed her investments perfectly, correspondence with her own attorneys, medical evaluations from doctors confirming she was mentally sharp. What she didn't have was witnesses. Everyone in her life was either working for Richard or too scared of him to get involved. Everyone except me, the $11 an hour caterer who was dumb enough or brave enough, I still haven't decided which, to help her. Margaret explained that there was going to be a family meeting in 3 days. Richard had arranged it to present his concerns about her mental state to the family lawyer and a doctor he'd hired. It was supposed to be the first official step in getting her declared incompetent. Margaret wanted me there, signing for her, making sure everything she said was accurately communicated. But more than that, she wanted me to record it, to document Richard's manipulation in real time. "He'll try to twist my words," she signed. "He'll say I'm confused, that I don't understand what's happening. But if you're there, if someone is truly interpreting for me, he can't do that." I left the Ashford estate that night with Margaret's personal phone number, a $1,000 cash advance, more money than I'd ever held at one time, and a knot in my stomach that felt like it might never untie. Marcus didn't speak to me the whole ride back to the city. He didn't have to. The silence said everything. When he dropped me off at my apartment in Queens, he finally looked at me. "Whatever she said to you, forget it. The Ashfords eat people like us for breakfast. They don't need saving, and you definitely can't save them." Then he drove off, leaving me standing on the sidewalk at 2 a.m, wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I went to work at my other job, serving lunch at a midtown restaurant where the tips were decent and nobody tried to involve me in family conspiracies. I avoided Marcus's calls. I practiced what I'd say if Richard Ashford's lawyers came after me. I looked up YouTube videos about testifying as a witness and read articles about elder abuse and financial exploitation. But mostly, I thought about Margaret's face in that library. The way she'd looked so relieved when I agreed to help, like she'd been drowning and I'd thrown her a rope. Would you have done the same thing? Let me know in the comments, because honestly, I'm still not sure if I was brave or just stupid. The morning of the family meeting, I woke up at 5 a.m. with my heart trying to punch through my ribcage. Margaret had arranged for a car to pick me up, an actual town car with a driver who held the door open for me like I was somebody important. The ride back to the Hamptons gave me too much time to think, too much time to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Richard Ashford could have me arrested for trespassing. Marcus could sue me for breach of contract. I could end up blacklisted, broke, and possibly in jail. But then I thought about my brother, about the time a teacher had tried to hold him back in school because she couldn't be bothered to learn basic sign language, about the way my mom had fought like hell to make sure he got the education he deserved. Sometimes you have to fight, even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. The family meeting was in Richard's home office, a massive room with windows overlooking the ocean. Richard sat behind his desk like a CEO about to fire someone. Connor and Emma flanked him, looking uncomfortable. Diane perched on a chair in the corner, checking her phone. A man in an expensive suit, the lawyer, I guessed, sat with a briefcase open on his lap. And another man, older, with a doctor's calm demeanor, sat taking notes. Margaret was the last to arrive, walking in with her back straight and her chin up. When she saw me standing by the door, she smiled. Richard noticed the smile and his eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" he demanded. Margaret pulled out her phone and showed him a typed message. "This is Sophie. She's my ASL interpreter for this meeting. I want to make sure I understand everything being discussed about my future." I watched Richard's face go through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Surprise, anger, calculation, then smooth, practiced concern. "Mother, you don't need an interpreter." We can communicate just fine." Margaret's response was to look directly at me and sign, "Please interpret everything said in this meeting. Everything." I cleared my throat. "Mrs. Ashford requests that I interpret all communication in this meeting." My voice sounded stronger than I felt. Richard stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I could see the moment recognition hit. The caterer from the dinner party. The one who'd messed up his carefully laid plans. His jaw tightened, but he was too smart to make a scene in front of witnesses. "Fine, let's begin. What happened in that meeting would make your blood boil. Share this with someone who needs to hear this story, because it's about to get real." The doctor started by explaining concerns about Margaret's ability to manage her affairs. He'd never actually examined her. All his information came from Richard's reports about her behavior. Withdrawn from social activities, increasingly isolated, difficulty communicating with family members. I interpreted each point for Margaret, watching her face remain calm even as the accusations piled up. When the doctor finished, Richard added his own observations. "She barely speaks anymore. She sits alone in her room for hours. She's been making erratic financial decisions, giving money to strangers." That last part made my stomach clench. Was he talking about the $1,000 Margaret had given me? Margaret signed to me, and I spoke her words. "I'm not withdrawn. I'm deaf. I've always been deaf. But my hearing aids stopped working well about 2 years ago, and instead of helping me find better ones, my family stopped including me in conversations. I'm not isolated by choice. I'm isolated because you stopped trying to communicate with me." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. This clearly wasn't going according to Richard's script. Margaret continued, her signs sharp and angry now. "As for erratic financial decisions, I've managed the family trust for 30 years. I've increased our wealth by 40% through careful investments. The strangers I've given money to include scholarships for deaf students and donations to disability rights organizations. If you'd ever bothered to ask me, I would have explained that." Richard's mask was slipping. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're becoming paranoid, defensive. You think we're against you." Margaret smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. She signed something, and I hesitated. This was the moment, the point of no return. I interpreted, "I know you've been recording me. I know about the cameras. I know about your meetings with the lawyer to petition for guardianship. And I know why you're really doing this." The room went dead silent. Richard's face drained of color. Margaret pulled out her own phone and played an audio recording. Richard's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "Once we have guardianship, we can liquidate the trust assets, pay off the estate taxes, and distribute the remainder. She doesn't need $20 million to live in a nursing home. She won't even know the difference." I watched Richard's world crumble in real time. The lawyer was already packing up his briefcase, clearly wanting no part of whatever this was. The doctor looked horrified. Connor and Emma both looked shocked. Apparently, they hadn't known the full extent of their father's plan. Diane had finally put down her phone. Margaret signed, and I interpreted with more satisfaction than I probably should have felt. "I'm not going to a nursing home. I'm not incompetent, and I'm not giving you control of my life or my money. I've already filed papers with my own attorney. You're removed as executor of my estate. You're removed from the board of the family trust. And if you ever try something like this again, I'll cut you out completely." Richard stood up so fast his chair fell over. "You can't do this. I'm your son. Everything I've done is for your protection." Margaret's hands moved so fast I almost couldn't keep up. "You mean everything you've done is for my money? There's a difference. Get out of my house." "Your house?" Richard's voice cracked. "I bought this house. I paid for the renovations." Margaret's smile was razor sharp. She signed, and I interpreted, "Check the deed. It's in my name. It's always been in my name. You've been living in my house, spending my money, and planning to steal my life. Now get out." I'd never seen a billionaire cry before. It wasn't dignified. Richard left his own office looking 10 years older, his children trailing behind him, his wife already on her phone probably calling her own lawyer. The doctor and the lawyer practically ran out of the room. And then it was just me and Margaret, standing in the sudden silence. She turned to me and signed, "Thank you." 2 simple signs that carried the weight of everything we'd just been through. I signed back, "You didn't need me. You saved yourself." She shook her head and signed, "I needed a witness. I needed someone who saw me as a person first. You gave me that." The aftermath was messy. Richard tried to spin the story, claiming Margaret had been manipulated by staff. But Margaret's lawyers were better than his, and the recordings she'd made were damning. Within a week, the whole family dynamics had shifted. Emma and Connor reached out to their grandmother separately, apologizing for not noticing what their father was doing. Diane filed for divorce. And Richard? He moved to California, took a position with a tech startup, and as far as I know, never spoke to his mother again. As for me, Margaret offered me a job. Not as a caterer, but as her personal assistant and ASL interpreter. The salary was more than I'd ever imagined making, enough to help my parents with my brother's expenses and still have money left over for myself. I quit working for Marcus, who, surprise, surprise, lost his catering license after an anonymous tip about labor violations reached the right people. I moved out of my Queens apartment into a small cottage on Margaret's property. And I learned that sometimes the richest people are the loneliest. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just treat someone like they matter. Margaret and I have coffee every morning on her terrace. Well, she has coffee. I have the fancy tea she orders specially for me because she noticed I don't like coffee. We talk about everything. Her late husband, my family, politics, books, the ridiculous drama of reality TV that we both secretly love. She's teaching me about investing and trust management. I'm teaching her about TikTok and why everyone's obsessed with true crime podcasts. We're an unlikely pair, a 75-year-old deaf billionaire and a 28-year-old former caterer. But somehow, it works. The best part? Margaret started a foundation for deaf seniors, providing resources, interpreters, and legal advocacy for older adults in the deaf community who might be facing similar situations. She asked me to help run it. Me, the girl who used to scrape plates in other people's kitchens. Now I'm helping change actual laws, creating programs, making sure that what happened to Margaret, the isolation, the assumption of incompetence, the attempted exploitation, doesn't happen to others. I still think about that dinner party sometimes. The moment Marcus grabbed my arm and told me to stay quiet. The moment I chose to sign anyway. It's funny how one small act of basic human decency can change everything. If I hadn't responded to Margaret's signing, if I'd just followed orders and stayed invisible, she might be in a nursing home right now, stripped of her autonomy, her fortune divided among people who couldn't be bothered to learn how to communicate with her. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who needs to remember that standing up for what's right, even when it's scary, even when you might lose everything, that matters. That changes lives. Maybe it'll even change yours. People ask me if I was scared that night in Richard's office. The truth? I was terrified. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely sign. My voice cracked when I interpreted Margaret's words. But fear doesn't mean you're making the wrong choice. Sometimes it means you're making the brave one. And brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do the right thing even though you are. I learned something important through all of this. Invisibility is only safe until it isn't. Playing small might protect you in the moment, but it won't save you in the long run. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is just be present, be honest, be human with someone who desperately needs it. That's not heroic. That's just being a decent person. But apparently in a world full of people who look through each other, decency is revolutionary. Margaret is sitting across from me right now as I record this, drinking her coffee and reading the newspaper with her new high-powered hearing aids that actually work. She just looked up and signed, "Are you telling them the whole story?" I signed back, "Every word." She smiled and signed, "Good. Someone needs to know that deaf doesn't mean helpless, and old doesn't mean finished." She's right. She's a force of nature at 75, sharper than people half her age, fighting every day to change systems that are designed to diminish people like her. And I get to witness it. I get to be part of it. Because I made one choice. To see someone who was being ignored, to speak up when I was told to stay quiet, to risk my minimum wage job for someone else's dignity. Your life can change in a single moment, Mine changed when a billionaire's deaf mother looked at me and signed, "Thank you," and I signed back. What will your moment be? When will you choose to be seen, to be heard, to make someone else feel seen and heard? Maybe it's today. Maybe it's right now. And hey, if you've made it this far in the story, you're part of this journey with me. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to choose between keeping your head down and speaking up? What did you do? I read every single comment, and I promise you, your story matters just as much as mine. We're all just trying to figure this out together, trying to do the right thing in a world that doesn't always make it easy. Margaret just passed me a note. It says, "Tell them I'm proud of you. I'm crying now, and I don't care who sees it. 2 years ago, I was invisible. Now I'm here, telling you this story, living a life I never imagined possible, all because I refused to stay quiet when someone needed to be heard. Don't stay quiet. Don't stay invisible. You never know who needs you to be brave."